Good evening, ladies, gentlemen, and extraterrestrials. Tonight, I have a new reading for you, courtesy of the Washington Post. This here is a special request from a loyal listener. Shout out to Knack for that, who brought this article to our attention. This article is entitled, Why is Everyone So Mad at Jada Pinkett Smith? The actress has a theory about the backlash to her new memoir. Now, I must admit, I have not read this entirely on my own, so we will both be surprised, entertained, and enthralled together. Sit back, relax, and maybe enjoy a libation. Something's telling me I'm going to regret not having one of my own, but I will reserve my judgment until the end. And so, now we begin. This article is written by Helena Andrews-Dyer. Just 2 weeks in, the publicity tour for Jada Pinkett Smith's new memoir, Worthy, has been less of a whirlwind and more of a hurricane. The book is over 400 pages of candid reflections on self-judgment, unconditional love, and identity. Still, those answers have led to even more questions. Chief among them, who is Jada Pinkett Smith? But also, how? How is she holding on to whomever that woman is? How is she the eye of the storm? That's the whole point. You really have to be centered in your own sphere because what's happening with everyone else, said Jada Pinkett Smith before taking one of many considered pauses in our conversation, careful to not appear cavalier. We're all our own universes, so you just got to make sure you're in alignment. The headlines, sit downs, and subsequent blowback she's received for cherry picked revelations in the book, most specifically that she and Will Smith have been separated since 2016, have created a cottage industry of Pinkett Smith pile-on. We just lived through Jada's memoir rollout, and I'm tired, says Sam Sanders on his pop culture podcast, Into It. Somebody tell Jada Pinkett Smith to leave us alone, said comedian and actor Ryan Davis in a TikTok rant that has been viewed 4.1 million times so far. Talk show host Sherry Shepard, rapper Rick Ross, culture critic Jamil Hill, and ESPN's Stephen A. Smith have all weighed in. Even Saturday Night Live spoofed her. Sorry if I seem a little tired. I've been on the Today Show 14 times in 3 days, joked SNL's Ego Nodem as a platinum haired Jada Pinkett Smith. First, let's get one thing out the way. Jada Pinkett Smith is doing just fine. Actually, she's better than fine. The 52-year-old is good. Her hazel eyes are sharp. The skin is skinning. The woman is glowing. Even her clothes are telling the same story. At the book's Baltimore tour shop, Pinkett Smith wore a luxe neutral sweater set with sneakers embodying the word cozy in its most Beyonce-fied definition. Comfortable in my skin. In person, the next afternoon, cocooned in a massive coral coat over another sable knit set, The actress looks like she's found on the other side of the storm. Pinkett Smith's tone is telling, signifying with a shift in octave the weight of what's coming out of her mouth to whoever is sitting across from her. Is she gift wrapping her words in a soft alto? Welcome the guru, although she is loath to call herself that. This is when phrases like the great supreme shadow, the exile lands, and centering are sprinkled in the conversation. But the Baltimore accent Hollywood told her to ditch 3 years ago still comes out to play. Then she's keeping it all the way real. Her neck will get involved. Then there's her laugh, high pitched and unbound, bolting from her throat and leaping to the ceiling whenever something is really funny because it's true. And it escapes when I ask, we don't really know you, do we? Here's a list of the things we know about Jada Pinkett Smith. She has been married to Will Smith, one of the most famous actors alive, for almost 26 years. Their relationship is different. Their 3 children seem free, well adjusted. Eventually, she started her own wildly successful talk show, Red Table Talk, on Facebook. The famous couple did an episode together, scratching the surface of a romantic entanglement Pinkett Smith had that did not go over well. Cracks in the Will and Jada carapace became more pronounced. Then, when her husband decided to slap Chris Rock at the 22 Oscars after the comedian told a joke about Pinkett Smith, she was blamed for the debacle despite her long held public silence. And now, after writing her own story in Worthy, divulging many details about herself, but little actual news about other people, the consensus is that Pinkett Smith is a manic, toxic nightmare who should shut up and sit down. Here's a picture of the well adjusted children. And only 2 of them are hers, not 3. But that's none of my business. Worthy begins with Pinkett Smith at the top of a steep driveway and the bottom of her own well. In those introductory pages, she writes of her first foray into ayahuasca, the plant based psychedelic she credits with saving her life. At this point, my level of desperation was so all consuming. All I could think was, what do I have to lose? If it killed me, great, my mission accomplished. If not, thank God. Turns out she'd been struggling with depression and later suicidal thoughts since her early 20s. She'd been on Prozac at one point. Then Will Smith happened, and love and marriage and family turned down the alarm bells for a time. I'd been a highly functioning depressive for so long, she writes, but an infamous 40th birthday celebration, a weekend long extravaganza with her closest friends and family, revealed what a mental fog Pinkett Smith had been under. Hopelessness set in and the actress fell apart. Worthy is the story of how she put herself back together from the fatherless child to the talented teenager selling dope on the side, to the young actress with a chip on her shoulder, to the wife and mother who didn't think she deserved her so called perfect life. It's hard to square that woman on the throes of her second mental breakdown with who she is now. Guru or gadfly, loved or hated, Pinkett Smith cradling a cup of hot tea in both hands, possesses the kind of calm that is both admirable and enraging. Because how can anyone be this above it all? Who can survive that? Who is she? Well, I don't think it's a who is that? That's the thing, said Pinkett Smith, laughing at her own inscrutability. Because the who is that is constantly growing. Every day I learn something new about myself, such as really just how much work that I've done to be able to walk this walk that I'm walking right now and really feel great, she says. When seemingly the world adored me, I was miserable. Now, seemingly, there is so much hate out there, and I'm like so joyful. I wake up every morning so happy to be me, so happy to be alive, said Jada Pinkett Smith. And it's there, the sentiment that seems to grate against the collective understanding of who Pinkett Smith should be, her happiness. Because what is everyone so mad about, really? Her admission that she and Will have been living separate lives for 7 years? On a Red Table Talk in 2018, the couple said that they don't call themselves married, instead, choosing life partners. Her writing about Tupac, her best friend since high school, she doesn't get to him until page 82. Or is it common sense advice about relationships and investing in yourself like this? People don't understand that love levels up, especially if you're planning on being with someone forever. Love is not meant to be stagnant. So that means that we have to level up, said Pinkett Smith. We go into relationships a lot of times to substitute for the things we don't want to give ourselves or don't know how. Once I really was willing to learn and give myself that grand love. Only then could I then share that love with Will. Oh, the horror. The mood following Jada Pinkett Smith talk at Enoch Pratt Free Library in Baltimore could be best described as exuberantly thoughtful. If fans weren't rushing to the stage to snap photos of the Smith family, all three kids, her mother, Adrienne Banfield Norris, and Will showed up. Then they were having head nodding discussions about what just happened. In a minutes long speech, Will told Jada and the world that he had her back. I really wanted to come out here and just be here and hold it down for you, the way you have held it down for me, Smith said. Was the woman who had been branded with a scarlet letter as scary as they had been led to believe? It's easy to make her the villain, explained Chanel Green, who was standing outside confabbing with friends. I think in a world where people are committed to hating Black women for absolutely no reason, it was nice to hear her side of the story. She's a Black woman in America. She's a scapegoat. She often gets blamed for things that she hasn't given a voice to. Green, no relation, and her group, who call themselves the Queen's Circle, were in search of cocktails to further debate what they heard inside. I don't relate to her per se, said another friend, but I've been on a journey myself. And when you're on a journey, people just don't understand you. The group went on to dissect the finer points of being bulletproof versus impenetrable, and whether Pinkett Smith, seemingly so above these criticisms hurled at her, could still remain open and receptive while protecting her peace. But you don't want to have that change the perception of self, added another friend. Added another friend. That's the part right there, added Pinkett Smith, using one of her many memed catchphrases. When I recount the Queen's Circle back and forth, the most magical healing elixir I've found is curing self judgment. Then you don't have a weapon within yourself that someone else's judgment can't ignite. But it's not about putting up walls like this doesn't affect me. No, I understand. I totally get it. That's just not where I am at now. You might think that way about me, but I know I'm not that. What Jada Pinkett Smith is vocal. She's a well written upon woman, to borrow a quote from Carlisa Pincola Estes, author of the bestseller Women Who Run with the Wolves, and one of her faves. She is a woman talking too much. A black woman taking ownership of herself, a woman who loves herself fiercely, perhaps even selfishly. Why are you mad? So I want to go back to all that seeming hate Pinkett Smith underscored at the beginning of our sit down. But before I can fully form a question, the actress already has an answer. Pinkett Smith has a different term for it: shadow. It's the sort of voluntary darkness that serves to cloak our understanding of self. See, sit with her long enough, and this is how you start to think. The shadow archetype was first introduced by psychoanalyst Carl Jung. It's a very complicated dynamic. It's a lot there, but it doesn't have anything to do with anything really, said Pinkett Smith with that high pitched laugh. The same people talking mess online, if they saw me in person, they'd be the same people wanting the picture. You know what I mean? That sounds ego driven, but then she told a story from her personal history. A big reason the blowback isn't knocking her over. This is in the book too. In 2005, Pinkett Smith and her new metal band Wicked Wisdom performed on tour with Ozfest. Founded by Sharon Osbourne and her husband, Black Sabbath frontman Ozzy Osbourne, the raging crowds were overwhelmingly white. I learned a lot being out there in what we would call the belly of the beast, where there's real hate, she said. During a show in either Kentucky or Kansas, she can't remember which K state, two white teenage boys screamed from the back of the crowd just as the music died down. Nigger bitch. Yeah, Pinkett Smith and band kept it moving. Later, while the band was signing posters in the lobby of the hotel, those two boys showed up. Pinkett Smith motioned for them to come over. I signed something for them and they took a picture. That was a lesson in shadow. What's happening now seems sort of quaint in comparison. That's why I can sit in some smoke, she said. Because I've been in places and situations where you think, oh, this smoke right here, this could be life or death. People want attention. People are angry about what's going on in their own lives. They are just projecting stuff. Most of it's not real. If we're not looking at our traumas, if we're not looking at our hurts, it creates the shadow within us that needs expression. Once we start healing, you get more conscious of it and you direct that energy differently. We all have it. I'm not trying to say I'm clean of shadow. I'm just in the practice of giving it a different job, said Pinkett Smith. Right now, Pinkett Smith's job is to tell on herself, but only so much, only the parts that might help, because there are, in fact, details of her life that she keeps to herself. I have all the respect for every face of God. I feel for me, there are certain practices that speak to me, which I won't talk about, she said. The thing I don't talk about is religion and politics, of course, because of the criticism. No, not that at all. I never have. It's just that's a very personal thing. And that's it, said Pinkett Smith. And despite all the so-called revelations in the book, which were all centered on men, Will, Tupac, Chris Rock, most of what she writes about other characters wrote, most of what she writes about other characters is road already well trodden. As much as people think is in the book, there's so much that's not. What people consider to be oversharing for me is like, baby, I'm scratching the surface, said Pinkett Smith. Originally, she turned in a 600-page manuscript. There's enough on the cutting room floor for another book. Or maybe she and Will might even write one together about how they arrived at this brutal, that's beautiful plus brutal, according to Will, juncture. And there ain't much more in there. Like, it's no real tea about Will. I would never, she said emphatically, with a distinct twinge of Balmo. It's just universal shit that goes down with partners in general. If you haven't read Worthy, you might roll an eye or two at that. Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith are not a normal couple, but read it. They are, though. Resentment, avoidance, poor communication, discordant values, taking one another for granted, simmering rage, reconciliation in the face of a crisis. It's all there, which, of course, prompts the $64,000 question. So, are you together? I'm always careful with that because we are together in a way that makes us happy, said Pinkett Smith, who even has a working title for their joint book project, Don't Try This at Home. It'd be about how to have a healthy, fulfilling, happy relationship. Look, she gets it. How the Smiths choose, define, and redefine a relationship is a hot topic. To keep it real, look, when I realized that the romanticized version of my marriage would never exist, I was mad too. I was pissed, said Jada Pinkett Smith. I could see how that would piss some people off. But remember, that's shadow. She wants us all to pour some love on it and give it a different job. Meanwhile, Jada Pinkett Smith is going to keep talking. She's going to write, produce, and direct, maybe even act if the mood strikes her. And she's bringing Red Table Talk back because she's learned her lesson. Now I can really talk. Now we can dive in. We can go deep now because I've been able to tell my story in an in-depth way. People have a lot more history and a lot more context. And now we could just go a whole nother layer. All right. And that's from Helena Andrews-Dyer, who is a reporter on the Washington Post pop culture team. She joined the Post in 2013 and is the former co-author of the Reliable Source column. Um, is there any more information on the writer? Oh, here we go. I thought this was interesting. Columbia University in the city of New York, BA English, Northwestern University, Master's in Journalism. Helena Andrews-Dyer is a reporter on the Washington Post pop culture team. Before that, she was a columnist for the Reliable Source for several years, writing about the intersection of pop culture and politics. Where have we heard that before? Before joining the Post, Andrews Dyer was a contributing editor who wrote for XO Jane, a digital women's magazine. She also previously wrote the single minded column for The Root, a division of the Post. Andrews Dyer is the author of 3 books: Bitch is the New Black, Reclaiming Her Time, The Power of Maxine Waters, and The Mamas: What I Learned About Kids, Class, and Race from Moms Not Like Me. Honors and awards, NABJ salute to excellence for the feature story. This ain't another horror story about Black motherhood. All right. Now, that was a good read. It was it- fine. It was a fine article. I thought that she used she has a range as a writer, and I see there's a particular tone she was going for. She also has an extensive vocabulary, which I appreciated. We always love new vocabulary words, right? Um, my comments on Jada, and I will keep this brief. This is my impression of Jada. Okay. And I know people look for me to diagnose people, which I'm not going to do, but I will give you my just opinion. Okay. Because Jada Pinkett Smith is a Black woman, I think it's not easy to pinpoint the caricature that we're looking at here. I simply say that because when we see Black women in the media, we see a certain particular type of Black woman. And what I have noticed is that the strong, educated, talented, witty, let's take a Claire Huxtable, archetype, right? That gets transferred onto women, onto Black women in the public eye. They're either ratchet, like, okay, we can look and say, okay, she's ratchet. That's a hood rat right there. Or we can look and say, no, this is a classy, educated Black woman, right? This is a strong Black woman. And that's pretty much what it is. It's the Madonna or the whore thing. Okay. That's not who I see when I see Jada Pinkett. So let me pull up a different picture. And this is what I think the Washington Post failed in the picture department in terms of the photography did not fit the article or the personality. It was very blah. It's very neutral. And this isn't a neutral personality. Okay. Pull up on my computer here. This is Jada Pinkett. The punk rock images, okay? Jada Pinkett strikes me more of Wednesday Addams. That's who we're dealing with here. This is not Claire Huxtable, ladies and gentlemen. This is Wednesday Addams or Morticia. And her kids is fucking Wednesday and Pugsley. This is what we're dealing with. And she didn't want to go into God and her other practices, as she mentions, right? Because it's witchcraft of some sort. She got to found her journey through ayahuasca. See? Morticia and Wednesday. When everybody was thinking she was living a happy fairy tale life, that's when she was the most unhappiest. Why? Because she's projecting the opposite of herself. Now that she's seen as the villain.
Me? Me? Am I the drama? I don't think I'm the drama. Maybe I am. Am I the villain? I don't think I'm the villain.
Now that she's seen as the villain, she's in a happier space because that is who she is. She's like, some people are just like that. Some people like black, they like darkness, they like horror films, they like, you know what I mean? I'm sure she can get in. She probably loves Edgar Allan Poe. You know what I'm saying? Some people just have deep, dark souls and little tiny black hearts. That's all. And you need that. You need that. Every woman is not Susie Homemaker. Every woman is not Martha Stewart. Some women are Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. That's who we're dealing with here. This is Elvira. Maybe even Elmira from Tiny Toons. Okay? But this is not Claire Huxtable, friends. Will Smith is no saint. With that being said, he's probably closer to Martha Stewart than she is. And I have heard the rumors. Now, every time I get on this platform and tell people what I know and what I heard, everybody getting their little panties in the damn tizzy. So I'm gonna keep that to myself. But as she said, she's just scratching the surface. Oh, homegirl, she's just scratching the surface. There's a whole lot of freaky, kinky things going on up in there between Morticia Adams over here and Gomez, who loves that little tiny black heart of hers. You understand what I'm saying? Just loves it. Just feeds into it. The darker and the more witchy and creepy that Morticia behaves, the more that Gomez is like, oh, by love. See, I love this shit. Okay. So that's what we're dealing with here. That's not what people expect. And I say that because if she was a white woman and she had the long black hair and wore black every day and fitted, then we'd be like, okay, we know what we're looking at. This makes sense. I get it. I get it. When she comes out here with this short blonde hair and this neutral sweater and all this St. John's knit stuff, that this performance they're trying to put, and that's probably not her fault. It's probably what they think readers the want. That's the problem. They keep trying to market her to what they think that professional black women want and all of this, and that's the other problem. This woman has a successful acting career, but this isn't a highly educated. I don't know if she's well read or not, but as she said, I don't speak on religion and politics. One thing that I can say across the board that intelligent people have in common is having strong opinions about religion and politics. They might not even adhere to a particular religion. They might not even adhere to a particular political party. In fact, most highly intelligent people would prefer to pontificate upon those things rather than to choose sides. But they have an opinion. She doesn't have an opinion because she's not intellectual in that way. And the disappointing part, and this isn't a criticism of just her, this is just something that I'm seeing a lot in women, period. It ain't a black woman thing, it ain't a white woman thing, I have grown up watching the media and probably just the time period that I was in try to showcase women as more than just mothers and wives and as different in different capacities in terms of career, and tried to show women as intellectuals and tried to show women as inventors and all that. And I think the women who are that are a lot of times, far beyond their peers in terms of intellect. But I think to say that the average woman is intelligent, interested in politics, interested in having intellectual conversations, interested in more than just the way that she looks. I think to say that the average woman is above being petty, being now maybe this could be an American thing because I've only ever lived in this country, so maybe it's just America, okay? But around here between the Pacific and the Atlantic, the average woman is basic and simple. And the challenge and the expectations for women have risen. But I don't know that the desires of women in on average in general to be more than that have necessarily risen with the expectations being put on and being created by the media. As somebody who has always sought out to and been interested in being a career woman, because my grandmother explained to me when I was very young, and I was always a listener. I was always somebody who appreciated any advice I could get from people who had been on this planet longer than me. I always, would take every bit of information in and just store it. And I would pull up what was valuable, as I matriculated through life. And I've been able to avoid a lot of very common mistakes that women make. And I think, being raised by a single father, I didn't spend my puberty and my younger formative years as a teenager in a competitive environment with my mother. You understand what I'm saying? And my sister's like 5 years younger than me. So it's not like we were fighting over clothes or any of that kind of stuff. By the time she hit puberty, I was leaving, right? I was going off to college. So the type of conversation that my dad would have with me if I was having a problem, for example, it would be in a male way. Men use sports analogies for everything. And, men talk a lot about um, s- mental fortitude or testicular fortitude. Like my dad would say stuff like, walk it off, don't be a sissy, and people don't talk to girls like that in general. It's more so um, people nurture girls' feelings a lot. And what I've also noticed as I became a professional is that my female colleagues or even my friends that I made in college could not handle that part of my personality. Women in general wait for the approval of others to make decisions. If women want to get their hair done, I remember when I got braces, one of my close friends to me says to me, "I didn't know you were getting braces." I said, "Because you're not an orthodontist." "Well, you didn't tell me you were getting braces." "Well, you weren't paying for them." "Well, I'm just saying most people would have said, 'Yeah, girl, I'm going to go get some braces.' But I didn't think to announce it. And I know that when you talked to me or saw me the next time, you would notice I had braces. It's kind of hard to miss, right?" When I got pregnant, I was pregnant for a few months before my college friends or my family knew about it. I was so focused on, number one, I was sick, but number two, focused on preparing to bring this child in my life and for my life to change. You know what I mean? Me and my husband were getting prepared for that. I was not thinking about telling my friend. Plus, I didn't want, some of the negativity that can come along with women having happy moments. And everybody behaved the way that I knew that they would behave when they found out that I was pregnant. Jealous and petty. You know what I'm saying? With that being said, women in general, well, and then a few men, but that's a whole nother conversation. But one of the criticisms that I got from a girl who I went to college with was, "Well, you didn't tell me you were pregnant because you were not the daddy." I say that to say this. Women have a very hard time with making decisions, changing their hair, getting married, staying in relationships, when to leave a relationship, when to stay, if they get pregnant, whether to keep the baby, whether to abort the baby, whether to give the baby up for adoption, whether to be a stay-at-home mom, whether they go to work. They look into everybody outside of them for approval on every single solitary decision that they make. And if you are the type of woman that doesn't need validation from others, they will kick you out the group. That makes women uncomfortable when you are not asking for their permission to change the way you think about something, to change the way that you are going to show up in the world, or even your opinions on something. I don't like Beyonce. I don't dislike Beyonce because I think she can't sing. I don't like her because I think she's dumb. I think that being a dumb woman is the worst thing that a woman could be. I have more respect for the street walking prostitutes because not all of them are dumb. I have more respect for women in prison than I do for women who are dumb. I don't like dumb women. I can be friends with somebody to an extent, unless you're one of them super fans, huh? I can be friends with somebody who has a difference of opinion, but it bothers women when they like something and they are just totally, enamored with something and somebody else doesn't approve of it or they don't like it. I've had arguments you guys have seen on this platform even before with one of my friends called in, and we're going back and forth because she shared her opinion. I had a difference of opinion, and she kept trying to explain herself. No, but what I'm saying is this, baby girl, I understood what you said the first time, and you are entitled to your opinion. I disagree with you. I'm not going to change my opinion. I see it. I see what you're saying. I understand your vantage point. I understand why you see the world that way. We're going to have to agree to disagree because I'm never going to see it the way that you are seeing it. And that doesn't mean that I think that you are wrong. My vantage point, how I look at the world, how I approach it, and how I'm going to deal with the the outside stimuli, how I'm going to deal with my environment, that's for me to choose and for me to decide. And I'm not going to change that because that's not what you would do or because you feel uncomfortable with that being the way that I approach the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? And I say all of that to say, ladies, now, men, there are more increasingly men having this problem as they become more feminized in this culture. Survival of the fittest. I don't know, anybody ever heard of that before? Survival of the fittest. This is why in 2023, all the white women look alike, all the black women look alike. Everybody's hair is the same. The clothes are the same. The relationships are the same. The toxic relationship drama, as the author wrote in that article, Will and Jada's relationship isn't different from anybody else's. And she lists off a whole bunch of stuff going on in their relationship that was relatable to her. I'm not having that experience. None of it. None of those things she lists, I don't have none of them problems. Now, I haven't been married 26 years, but I have not had any of those problems that they're listing. I think what women need to do before they start having children, before they start getting married, is discover the identity. I think the selfish part, I think the unfair part, I think the detrimental part is trying to create your identity around. And one of my good girlfriends helped me to identify this. 'Cause like I said, I didn't grow up in a house with a mother in my adolescence and young adulthood, going off to college, etc. You know what I mean? I didn't have that, so I did not realize how much women have. A lot of women and young girls have centered their entire personality around being somebody's wife, girlfriend, and mama. You don't have anything to give as a wife if you don't know who you are. You're just married. Being married and having a wedding and being a wife are not the same things. That's why you have husbands who have full on relationships with people call them side chicks and mistresses and all of that, because he's married to one woman, but his wife is a whole nother woman. The wife is the person who is challenging him, who is encouraging him, and who is nurturing him. You cannot do that for a husband or a child and you don't know who you are and you haven't been through anything. But because so many women are looking for validation through these titles of wife and mother, that's the first thing they want to do the minute they start a period is go looking for a husband and go looking to be somebody's mother. There's been a lot of criticism about that Barbie movie, but at the same time, I understand that the intellectual capacity on this damn planet is real low. That's the whole point that the damn Barbie movie is trying to make. It's not anti being a wife and mother. It's about coloring yourself with more than that, so you have something to give as a parent. So you have something to give in these relationships. When my husband has a problem at work, the best person that he can talk to, and you can ask him, the best person he's going to talk to about it is me. Not just because we're married and we're partners, because I'm the smartest person he knows outside of himself, who's had so many different experiences and challenges that I have overcome on my own. When my daughter has issues with other kids her age, mommy has been through all of that. And guess what? Nobody didn't defend me. I had to defend myself. So I empower her to do that in whatever way she sees fit. I'm not going to tell her, don't cuss that little girl out because I want you to behave this particular way. You deal with these little baby heifers, because these little heifers is bad already. You deal with these little heifers the way that you need to deal with these little heifers. Don't be letting them punk you, because that's how my father raised me. And that's the difference when they talk about, how kids perform. It's with single fathers versus single mothers, and how households perform without men. Just because it's a male in the house with a phallus does not mean that you got a man in the house, right? But you got some sort of man in the house. They ain't even got to be the greatest man in the world, but somebody who has like a masculine kind of like selfish kind of brain. It's good for a child who is developing, because children are not supposed to have a bunch of responsibilities outside of themselves. And a lot of young girls do. Now, Jada Pinkett's not one of them girls. She wasn't raising younger siblings. This is somebody who was raised by her grandmother, and although her parents were neglected, her parents were off doing whatever they was doing. Her grandmother was very nurturing and made sure that girl had what she needed to have. Okay. She's got a little bit of a Napoleon complex and looks like a taste for the dark side. That's just her personality. That's just the way she's made up. And I think she creates a lot of unnecessary challenges for herself so that she can feel something because she's a thrill seeker. She doesn't want to be in the house of Susie Homemaker. She probably wants to be hang gliding and jumping off of buildings and rock climbing or whatever the case it is. And she probably feels like she spent a good part of her youth um, catering to other people and playing a role she didn't want to play. And now that she realizes what it is that she would have rather been doing, she feels like it's too late. Okay. And that's something I see in the field a lot. So I think that's the biggest thing women could do for themselves. And I'm working on a podcast and I'm going to be doing for Spotify where we'll get more into that because you raise up the women, that's how you really raise up the nation. And we also do women a disservice with the girls who don't want to do anything, the girls who just aren't that smart, the girls who aren't that basic, who are just a little basic. There's a place for them too. And we do them and the rest of the world a disservice by constantly trying to elevate them to, Oprah Winfrey. Everybody ain't Oprah. Everybody ain't Oprah and Gail. Everybody's not that, doesn't have that type of ingenuity. That ain't everybody. Okay. Some of these girls is basic. We are on the precipice of World War III. What is Beyonce doing? Selling perfume. And that's why I don't like her. But for some people, that's okay. But just understand, you are empowered by her. I'm not. When there was a plague scourging the planet and everybody was inside washing their hands every 15 minutes and missing their grandmother's funerals, Meg the Stallion was running around the streets of Los Angeles barefoot, butt naked, drunk off of Hennessy. That's not empowering to me. Some people may be impressed with that. I'm not. But if y'all would have let these little basic girls they just basic, y'all, they brain hurt. Because y'all trying to push them to be something that they're not. And it hurts them. That's all I have to say about that. Got a feeling we'll continue this conversation at a later date, but I just don't want this video to get too long. Thank you very much for listening. I'm your host, Kiki Green. This has been a special edition of Talk is Cheap. And love you guys for listening. Until next time, peace.